Hey everybody, I'm back again, and as you can tell by the Genesis in front of you, it's time for the Genesis overview video that I've been talking about. In this video, I'm just going to go over the basics of the different revisions of the Genesis. You might be thinking that there are only 3, and you'd kind of be right, because there are 3 models. But within those 3 models, there's a lot of different revisions. And that's what I'm going to go over in basics here. I don't want to get too detailed because that would take a lot of time, and we talked about that in the last video. But if you want to get into detail, I'm going to put a link to a thread over at Sega 16 that goes into great detail about what I'm talking about here. So just look down below for that and follow that and read to your heart's content. But let's go ahead and get right into it. Obviously, this is a Model 1. This is the first revision, which you can tell by the fact that it says high definition graphics up top. That doesn't really mean anything. A lot of people believe that it does, but it doesn't. In actuality, all Model 1s use the same video encoder, which is a Sony CXA1145. They're all the same, so this is really just marketing. Has no bearing on the video performance of any of the Model 1s, but something subtle that you definitely can't see in the video is this logo here is different from other Model 1s in the fact that it's two-tone. On the outside here it's more closer to white, whereas in the center here it's more closer to gray. On later revisions it's just more of a gray. I'm not sure why they changed it. But that's a subtle identifying feature of these earlier Model 1s. Not that you need it with this emblazoned across the top here. Now another thing is, if you look on the back here and look at the ports on the back, you will notice this. This is on every model that says high definition graphics on the top. You'll always see this port. And this is an external port that was used for only one thing that I know of, and that was a modem, which was released outside of the United States. We never saw it. It just basically attached to the back here and screwed into this hole. And I mean, it had very limited use outside of the US and just never caught ground, so we just never saw it. But you know, whatever. It would have been neat to kind of see an early multiplayer platform, sort of like what we have today with the PlayStation 3 and the 360, but the other ports on here are, you have your channel switch, your RF out, your AV out, and your power. Now, another thing to note about these first revisions is something called TMSS, and I'm not quite sure what that acronym stands for, but basically what it's referring to is units that play or will not play unlicensed games. This one is a non-TMSS unit. That means it will play unlicensed games. And how you can tell a unit plays or will not play unlicensed games is when you turn it on. This one, when you turn it on, it goes straight to booting into the game. TMSS units that will not play unlicensed games will show the "this is licensed by Sega" screen before it loads the game screen. So for what that's worth, some people prefer the non-TMSS units. I really don't care. This one came with a few other Genesis systems that I bought, and it's kind of interesting to have, just from, you know, it's a different revision, and you know, I'll probably keep it around. It's not more valuable than the others, but as for finding out whether or not your unit can or cannot play unlicensed games, you need to look on the bottom and look at your FCC ID right here. The units that play unlicensed games have a longer FCC ID than the ones that do not. That's something that you can look at in this thread at Sega 16. It will go over that in detail and tell you how you can spot one of those systems. But just remember, just because it says high definition graphics up top does not mean that it will play, excuse me, does not mean that it will play unlicensed games. Just remember that. Now, as far as audio goes, this uses a Yamaha YM2612 audio encoder. Now, that's another thing that a common misconception that people have with these is that they have better audio than any other Genesis as well, and I'll go over that later. But now, there's another difference between these and later revisions is that the earlier models came with this controller. Now, one thing to notice with this is that it has red arrows here, and the ABC buttons have red inside of the lettering here, and it says trigger up top. Now, the earliest revisions came with these, and also this logo here is two-toned like on the system. Only earlier models came with this. These aren't very common. They're not really worth more, but this is the more common one that you would get. And the difference is that this is a single tone logo. The arrows are white. Trigger was moved down below the buttons. The buttons do not have coloring inlaid in them, and they say ABC up top here instead of trigger. But you know, that's really neither here nor there. It's just some came with one or the other, and earlier revisions came with the red. Later models came with this one. So now we will move on to the next revision of the Model 1, which is this. Now, going by the revisions on the motherboard, this is a VA6. High definition graphics models are a VA2 through 5. Actually, no, I take that back. They're a VA2 through 6. So basically, this is a VA6, and the only thing different on the top here that you can tell between the two of them is that it does not say high definition graphics up top. That's all that's changed. Even if you look here on the back, it has all the same ports. Basically, this is a VA6 high def model with a different top. This is the model that I got for Christmas growing up. I've had this since 1991, and this is what I play my Genesis games on for right now. But this is what I prefer to play Genesis games on, just because I'm nostalgic, and this is how I remember playing games. So this is what I play my Genesis games on, and this is how I prefer to play them. Maybe that's different for you, but that's how it is for me. And that's basically the only difference between this and the earlier revisions. Now, there is another VA6, which is this one right here. Now, I recently showed you this one in a pickups video, and this has one difference from that last one that I showed you. It is still a VA6, but if you look on the back here, it is missing the external port. Got a bit of a dry throat here, but and the relevance to that is I want to do a stereo mod on this. In case you didn't know, the Model 1s do not put output stereo sound to the AV outs. I am still unsure of why Sega decided to do this. It's idiotic, but they do not. It's just mono sound. Doesn't matter what you do, you will only get mono sound from this port right here. All the other ports are the same, still has the power, AV out, RF, and channel switch, but there is no external port here. So I plan to put some RCA jacks here and set it up to run stereo sound. A lot of people put them here. I think it looks kind of tacky, so I don't want to do that. And that's kind of why I look for this. Otherwise, it's exactly the same as all of the other revisions that I've showed you so far. If you don't want to modify your Genesis to output stereo sound to the rear, it's really easy. It outputs stereo sound from this headphone jack, and the volume is controlled by this slider. It's easy enough to just get a Y cable that has a 1/8 mini headphone jack plug on it, and then it goes to RCA cables on the other end, which you can plug into your stereo, your TV, your video switch, whatever. and you will get stereo sound. But like I said, it's controlled by this slider and it can distort very easily. And so I don't prefer to do that. I don't like that sticking out of the front either. It just depends on how you feel about it. But that will be a video that I do later on to modify this to output stereo sound. It's as simple as pie, as long as you know how to do some basic soldering things. So now we will move on to the last revision of the Sega Genesis. And actually, before I do that, let me go over what I was talking about with the sound chip. Now, anybody that tells you that the high definition graphics models have better video and more importantly better sound than any of the later models that do not say that, they don't know what they're talking about. They all use the same video and audio processors. So it's all the same. You're going to get the same audio out of them, same video, and let's be honest here, composite video out of these things sucks anyways. And I'll go over that in a minute. But yeah, so that covers that on the audio that I was talking about earlier. Now for the last revision. And it looks exactly the same as the last one I showed you. And this one sucks because it can either have that same video processor. Actually, no, they all have the same video processor. But this one has a Yamaha YM3438 sound processor with a modified DAC, which has terrible audio. It's horrendous. And I hear there's a way you can mod this to have great audio, but it's pretty extensive and, in my opinion, not worth the trouble. Also, you cannot modify these to play PAL region games. There are some PAL region games that will play in here just fine, but there are some that won't. And so you cannot do the 50 Hertz mod on this as far as I know. Now, like I said, this looks identical to the last one I showed you. There is only one way to identify it, and that is by the ports on the back. And I think it's pretty apparent, but they've just been moved over to the left. No external port, but they've all been moved over to the left. This is how you spot this. Do not get these models unless you plan to do that modification, which you can find at Sega 16. But out of the box, avoid this model like the plague. This is the VA7, and I would highly suggest against getting this model. Now, I mean, it's up to you which one of these you want to use if you want to get into a Model 1, but my preference is the VA6, which does not have high definition graphics written on the top. Some people prefer the other one. It's just the way I grew up playing it, so that's the way I remember it. So that's what I prefer to play my Genesis games on. That's all for the Model 1 Genesis. So let's move on and get to the Model 2. Alright, we're back with the Model 2. Right away, you won't notice some obvious differences between the Model 1 and the Model 2. Obviously, it's a bit smaller. It does not have the volume slider or the headphone jack. The power switch has been replaced with a button. I mean, it's pretty simple to see the differences between this and a Model 1. Some differences you may not see right away are on the back here. Not sure why it still has a screw hole. I'm not sure what that was used for, because obviously you're not going to be trying to attach that modem on here, but you'll notice it only has two ports, power and your AV out. And this is different from the AV out on the Model 1s. So your AV cables and your RF switch will not work from your Model 1 on this, because the AV out is also used for the RF switch. They're different for the Model 2. The other thing is the AC adapter is different as well. The AC adapter for the Model 1 will only work for a Model 1, but it will also work for a Sega Master System and the Sega CD Model 1 and Model 2. The adapter for this works for the Genesis Model 2, the Game Gear, the Nomad, and the 32X. So that is something you may want to keep in mind. They have different voltages and they have different plugs, so they will not work between each other. But now the tough part with these is they are hard to discern from each other, the different divisions, and they're quite a bit more convoluted than the Model 1s. On Sega 16, they say you can look inside the cartridge slot here to identify between the different revisions. For me, I found that kind of difficult and didn't find it very conclusive. I have two Model 2s, this one and the one that I use. This one I actually just sold. But I tried looking in the cartridge slot to identify them that way, and it really wasn't conclusive. I ended up taking them both apart. And that's the easiest way to me because it will say which revision it is on the board. This one is a VA1. Now, there's the VA0, VA1, and VA 1.8. They are the least desirable of the Genesis 2 models. That's why I'm selling this one. Now, what makes these undesirable is that they use the same audio processor as the VA7 Model 1. So the audio isn't that great. For the video, they can use the same video as the Model 1s, but there's two other video processors as well. Not that it really matters. There are subtle differences. Take a look at that thread at Sega 16, and it will go into detail about the video differences. I don't really care about them. Like I said, I'll explain that in a minute. But the Model 2 that I use is a VA 2.3. The VA 2 and the VA 2.3 will either use a Samsung or a Sony video processor, but the nice thing is that they use the same audio as the Model 1's VA 2 through 6. So they use that Yamaha YM2612. So out of the box, these the 2 and the 2.3 have the best audio straight out of the box. And that's why I use that Model 2. What I use it for is to play my 32X games, and when I fix that Model to Sega CD, I will use that on that as well. I don't like to put all that stuff on my Model 1, because like I said, that's not how I remember playing games on it, so that's what I use the Model 2 for, to play 32X and soon Sega CD games. So beyond that, there's a VA 3 and 4, which are also very desirable. However, they use the same audio as the VA7 Model 1s, but as I've been told, it is a revised version, and with some modifications, I've been told has the best audio out of any of the models and revisions of Genesis. So the only trick is the VA1, the VA0, 1, and 1.8 are unfortunately the most common. The 2s, the 2.3s are harder to find, and the 3s and the 4s are extremely difficult to find. And not to mention trying to ask eBay sellers or identify them at a yard sale, it's going to be somewhat difficult. So that's the differences between the Model 2s. Now, as for controllers, originally the Model 2s shipped with these 3-button controllers just like the Model 1s. But later on, they started shipping them with these 6-button controllers for games like Street Fighter 2, which is a godsend because with the 3-button controllers you'd have to push start to switch between your kicks and your punches. Now, a thing to note with these is some of the older games that use just 3 buttons didn't like them, so they have a mode button on top here that lets you, basically you have to hold it down when you turn it on, so then it switches to basically telling the Genesis that I'm only a 3-button controller, so that those games will work with these. But basically, those are the differences between the Model 1s and the Model 2s. And now I'm going to talk about the video and why I don't care about the different video processors in them, because like I said, honestly, the video in all of the Genesis models and revisions, it sucks. It really does. A lot of people do S-video mods, and I don't like to do that because it's very extensive, it's very difficult, especially if you've never done that kind of work before. I wouldn't have a problem doing it, but I think it's just stupid to bother when there's an alternative that's much easier, although it is more expensive. Now, the Model 1s and 2s natively put out RGB. That is a standard that is used commonly in Europe and Japan. And you can do that by getting a SCART cable for this. They make two different SCART cables, one for the Model 1s and one for the Model 2s. Now, they cost about $6 on eBay. It's really cheap. Now, to get it from SCART into something that you can use here, you'd either need something that you can input SCART to, or you can get a converter that will convert from the SCART to component, which is commonly used, especially these days, here in the States. And you can find those on eBay for roughly around $50. So for $60, you can do that, not have to open your console, not have to do any mods, and the video is spectacular. It's as good as you're going to get on a Genesis, and it looks better than the S-video. If you want to see what I'm talking about, there are plenty of videos here on YouTube that go over the quality difference between RF, which heaven forbid I hope you're not using, heaven forbid you're not using that, but and the composite S-video, and then the RGB 2 component. That is something that I'm trying to get to do. Once I have my systems back on a CRT, that is how all my Sega systems will be run. They will all be on RGB 2 components. But that is why I don't care which video encoders they have, is because it's just irrelevant. They suck. Either do an S-video mod, buy one from somebody that's done an S-video mod, or get an RGB to component conversion. Maybe that's a video I'll do later on, going over what you need for that. But basically that is it for the Model 2. Next we will move on to the Model 3. Alright, here we are with the Genesis Model 3. Right away you can tell it's a lot smaller than even the Model 2. The biggest difference between this and all of the other models is this is not made by Sega. This is actually made by Majesco, and I would actually go as far to maybe even call this a clone, because it does not play. Obviously this will not work with the Sega CD. It does not work with the 32X, although it can be modified to do so. And there are also some games that it will not play. Some of those games are Virtua Racing, Gargoyles. I'm sure if you looked on Google, you could find a complete list of games that this has trouble playing. Like I said, it's a lot smaller. It doesn't even have a power LED. It's just got that little orange sticker underneath the power switch. The AV port and the power port are on the side. And one thing to note is your AV cables and your power adapter for Model 2 will not work for this. In fact, the adapter for this, although it's the same size as the Model 2, will not work for any other pieces of equipment. So it will only work for this. It only has the amperage to run this little pile of crap. And also this only puts out mono sound. It does not put out stereo, just like the Model 1s. However, the Model 1s are capable of it. I don't believe that these Model 3s are. There is a complete list of modifications that can be done to these. I also hear that they output quite excellent composite video. Some of the best among the Genesis models. This does not put out RGB, obviously. So, I mean, I really don't care for these. I only bought this for this video to go over, you know, the Model 3. Some people like these things. It's kind of interesting. I might hold on to it just as a display piece, but I would never game on this thing. I just don't really care for them at all. But now the controllers they came with were also manufactured by Majesto, and there were two different ones. And this one, it's kind of a really clunky model. I mean, I really don't like this one at all. It's very clunky, and it's just everything about it's all wrong in my opinion. But it does have a turbo switch here, and the mode button has been moved to the center. But there is another one, which is more like the 6-button Model 2 controllers here. I don't mind this one. I actually kind of like this controller. Also has the turbo switch on it, but like the console hill, both of those are made by Majesto. They are not made by Sega, but they are licensed. Now that being said, there is a new Genesis out that people are calling the Model 4, which is a clone. It has built-in games, but you can put Genesis games into it. It is not a Genesis. In fact, it has all the problems that a lot of clones do, which are control problems, audio problems, graphical glitches. It is not. Don't call it a Model 4. It's a clone. That's what it is. There are only 3 models, and I highly suggest not getting it. I don't remember the exact name of it off the top of my head, but you'll see them generally selling for about 40 bucks on eBay right now, and they're just not good. The audio, I've seen YouTube videos. The controls are very, very bad. The audio is bad. The graphics they're okay, but yeah, that's generally all I have to say about the Genesis and all the different revisions. Like I said, down below there's a link to the Sega 16 thread. Go check that out for more details, or go ahead and post some comments. If I got something wrong, let me know. If you've got some more information, post it down there. If you got questions, post it down there, and I'll be happy to try to answer anything or get you to the people that can answer that for you. But expect pretty shortly here another pickups video, and we will see you for that video in a few days. So thanks again for checking this video out. Go ahead and like it, subscribe, share it. Let's get the word out, and have a good one, guys.